Hello, Patriots, freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and around the world. How we doing? I'll just wait till some people get on. I'm still talking to myself here. So I'm still banned on Facebook. Share this out, you guys. Share it out. If you're on YouTube, just copy the link and share it to Facebook, and we'll do it that way. Just waiting for some people to get in here. So I'm only streaming presently to YouTube, Twitter, DLive, and Liberty. Um, it's much harder to set up live to Rumble and Odyssey from my phone than it is from my desktop, so it is what it is. I'm still waiting for some more people to join. There we go. All right, so sorry, it's very rude. I'm chewing on a piece of beef jerky on a live stream. As you can see, I'm on the road coming back from Moose Jaw. Art Lucier put on a 3-day event down just outside of Moose Jaw called Faith, Fire, and Freedom. And he asked myself and Nadine Ness if we wanted to speak last night. Of course, I jumped at the chance. So did Nadine. So we did that. What a great crowd. Very receptive. Um, very open to the message. So I took it as an opportunity to also announce another development. I was asked by the Buffalo Party if I wanted to run under their banner in the by-election in Saskatoon. We assume will be happening sometime in the fall, late fall. So I told them to give me a week. I took that week and thought about it, had some discussions with some folks, and decided to accept their offer and to run under the banner of the Buffalo Party. It's really the only party alternative to the establishment that's fully registered and ready to go. So and time's a little bit of the essence. So and I really like their platform. I like I was watching their policy convention they had, and phenomenal policies, especially one near and dear to my heart is this absolute rejection of the UN agenda. Uh, so it's pretty easy for me to support a party that has that policy in place. Uh, and at the end of the day, a by-election is an enormous platform. It's a great way to put forward some information and some education, and to talk about the issues at hand and what we need to do. And also, it's a huge opportunity, first and foremost, to provide the people of Saskatchewan a viable, legitimate alternative to the establishment that we've watched the last couple of years move into tyranny, mandates, restrictions, you name it. The Sask Party was no different than any of the other provincial premiers or provincial governments. They fell right in line with essentially Trudeau and the Liberals, and we need to have opposition at the legislature, and we need to offer the people of Saskatchewan, as I said, a viable, legitimate alternative the establishment that has sold us out. So, what an enormous opportunity. Um, like I said, I really didn't need to take a week to think about it, but I did talk to some folks, and I do have, from what it seems so far, a lot of support. Even yesterday at the event, after I made the announcement, so many people came up to me and offered their support and encouragement. So I think Saskatchewan is ready for an alternative to what we've seen. I think Saskatchewan is thirsty and hungry for a party that's willing to stand up against Justin Trudeau and the Liberals and Ottawa in general, and to elect a party that's going to represent the best interests of the people of Saskatchewan. And so we hope to be that. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be nasty. I think it's going to be vicious. Um, I've had a big mouth in Saskatchewan for a while now, and the establishment doesn't like me, especially the NDP and the communists. They really don't like me. But the NDP, or sorry, the Sask Party, um, doesn't like me a whole lot either. I'll give you an example. I heard a story yesterday which warmed my heart. So Scott Moe went to a town hall event in Kelvington, Saskatchewan, and opened the floor to some questions, and somebody asked him what his position is on the Sustainable Development Agenda, the SDGs, and his reply was the same as I got from Pierre Poilievre, which was, I don't know what that is, I know nothing about it. And I guess, from what I understand, the people at that town hall were not too happy with Moe's response, and they sort of hammered on him after that. And that's such a beautiful thing. It means that what we've been doing the last couple of years in our town halls and educating people, the message is spread. People are getting it, especially if they're asking the question, what's your position on the UN Sustainable Development Agenda? That means people understand that that is the root of all our problems. That people understand the World Economic Forum is only there to support that agenda. So, like I said, very heartwarming to see that. And I want to see more of it. I want to hear more of it. I want the people to take back their responsibility. I want the people to start running the province. I want the people to get engaged, re-engaged, and hold our politicians responsible. So one of my pledges in running in Saskatoon-Meewasin to the people of that riding and in Saskatoon in general is I'll hold a town hall every 3 months, so quarterly, and update folks as to what's happening. And that, of course, this being a by-election, I would be the only one in the legislature of a different color observing what's happening and every so often getting an opportunity to speak. But I would pledge to that riding and just in general the people of Saskatoon and Saskatchewan for that matter. I'll do regular updates, whether it's a live in-person town hall or if it's a live stream that I always do anyway. It's really time that our politicians answer to the people. And I'll give you an example how that hasn't been happening. So not one politician, federally, provincially, municipally, across this country, over decades, not one politician has ever held a town hall event to explain to the people the consequences, the grave consequences to sustainable development agenda that they've committed us to, that they've signed us up to. Not one politician has ever done that. Not one politician has faced their constituents, the people that hired them, to tell them what sustainable development agenda is. To this very day, we have premiers like Scott Moe denying they know anything about it. We have somebody running for the leadership of the Conservative Party, claims to be running for the prime ministership, who claims to not know anything about it. We know they're lying. Of course they're lying. But they can't admit to knowing about it, because then all of a sudden they become accountable to it. Because it's them that have implemented this agenda for decades. So it's way past time that we hold our politicians accountable. And our politicians, prospective politicians, guarantee that they're going to inform their constituents and the people that hired them of what's happening, of what's going on. So I'm looking really forward to this campaign. I'm looking very forward to some debates. I'm looking very forward to getting into the fray. And it's going to be nasty, let's face it. They have a target on me. They have for a while. But I am more than willing to face that, because I stand on truth, and the truth will stand on itself. So I'm just a messenger of truth, and I'm going to upset some apple carts along the way, and I'm going to thoroughly enjoy that. Some people are asking, when would this happen? So the writ can't drop until they're sitting in the legislature, and from what I understand, that doesn't happen until the third week of October, somewhere around the 24th or 26th, something like that. So we're expecting it to be shortly thereafter. This is the seat that the NDP leader, Ryan Miley, had resigned from. So this is why there's a by-election that's required to fill that seat. And I think we have a real good opportunity of taking that seat. I think there's a lot of folks in Saskatchewan that are pretty tired with the establishment. And once we get the conversation out there and people understand how much they haven't been told, and what's at stake, I think the Buffalo Party has a great opportunity of winning this seat in this by-election. And I don't know who my opponents are. I had a quick look at the NDP guy. Apparently he's running strictly on LGBTQ platform. So we'll be able to chew that up pretty good. And the Sask Party, I don't know who the Sask Party's running in that riding as of yet, but I'll find out. So look towards the end of October for the writ to be dropped in this by-election, and to have a probably most likely a November campaign with an election probably towards the end of November, early December. So it's going to be pretty crazy, I think, because of course it's a by-election, so everybody will be focused on that rather than a general election where all these different ridings have their own issues and their own debates and so on. Whereas this one is just a by-election; it's the only one, and so everyone will be focused on that. So it's going to get a lot of attention, which is one of the reasons I agreed to run, because the size of the platform. This will be province-wide, and a great opportunity to educate and inform the people of Saskatchewan as to what's really going on and what we need to do to fix it. So, it's another platform that I just absolutely couldn't refuse. Um, and I look forward to it. I very much look forward to it. So I'm going to need your support. And of course, a lot of my audience, I've been focused my attention nationally for the last number of years through, my activities in the PPC and running federally. But for the last little while, I've really been sort of focusing down on provincial issues because I think provinces like Saskatchewan, Alberta, have a real opportunity, especially Saskatchewan. We're even more so than Alberta, because Saskatchewan is still more than 50% rural to urban split ratio. And it's the rural folks, and that's not to suggest that the cities don't have a whole ton of awesome freedom fighters and that have played a huge role in all of this. Of course, there is, but it's the rural folks. It's the farmers, the ranchers, small town folks that still have these values of self-reliance, self-determination, independence, community, and it was the rural folks. For example, in Saskatchewan, as the convoy was moving to Ottawa, as much as the convoy did pressure governments to start lifting the mandates and restrictions, that wasn't the only thing that was happening. And I've talked about this before, but in Saskatchewan, one of the things that was happening is the ruling party, the Sask party, at that same time had received only 10% of what they would have normally received in donations to that point in time of the year. And that was their base, and the Sask party's base predominantly is rural, is smaller centers and farmers and ranchers, basically telling the Sask party enough's enough, end the tyranny, Mr. Moe. And that's exactly what he did. So we still have this ability in Saskatchewan to force the hand of government because of who we are and what our identity is in this province, and that's huge. So, as I said last night in my speech to the folks there at the event, Saskatchewan has an opportunity to take back our province, but also help lead the country out of this globalist hell that they put us into. And we're a province again that has a majority of rural folks and people that understand what's really happening. Unfortunately, in the two urban centers that I consider to be urban in Saskatchewan, Regina, and Saskatoon, there's a lot of folks that depend on government for their livelihood. They work for government, or they're paid by government, or they're supported by government in some form or fashion. And that's why you see, them wanting government to get bigger and more bloated. And that's why they're so open to being dictated to by government, because they feel, their sense is that without government, they'll have nothing. And that's couldn't be further from the truth, but it's this trap that people get put into. And that's what we see in Alberta. I mean, Alberta's, has Edmonton and Calgary, two, huge cities that make up, the majority of the population of that province. So it's harder for rural folks, farmers, ranchers in Alberta to have the same impact on their provincial government as we do in Saskatchewan. So Saskatchewan has a real opportunity here to lead the country. And the convoy, and at that time, was a good example, because when Scott Moe finally decided to lift the mandates and restrictions because of their base basically saying enough's enough, Scott, and shutting down donations, he made that announcement. And what happened the very next day? Jason Kenney in Alberta announced that they'll be lifting the mandates and restrictions, but he had to do it sooner than Scott Moe because he had to be better. And then what happened? The rest of the country, the dominoes fell, and next thing you know, majority of the mandates and restrictions were lifted. And that's, of course, most of them were implemented by the provinces, because the provinces are you know, have the responsibility of healthcare. So most of these mandates and restrictions were provincial born. They weren't federal government, although they were taking cues and taking direction from the federal government. And this is where we need strength in government, in provincial governments, who can say no to Ottawa. That no, healthcare is our jurisdiction. We're going to determine what's best based on all the available evidence, based on all the available opinions and professional opinions of doctors and scientists and virologists and so on. And we have to have the courage as a provincial government to say no to Ottawa, to say no to tyranny. And that's why this is so important. Again, I think we can take our own province back and become a little bit more sovereign of a province within Confederation, within the existing Constitution, and exercise our autonomy and exercise the authority that the existing Constitution actually gives us. It's been years, decades, if ever, that our provincial premiers and provincial governments have actually exercised the power that they have. And we have to look at things. We have to look at issues like ending our contract with the federal government in policing. We have to look at bringing in our own local police, and maybe even sheriffs, so that the policing is local, that it's local people that understand the issues in rural Saskatchewan. And of course, we have our city police forces, but dealing with rural, we need people from our province. We need people that understand the lives and livelihoods of people that farm and ranch and live in these rural communities. We need local policing. So that's another thing that I'll be pushing for. The antidote to globalist hell that they're putting us in, the antidote is local. The antidote to hyper-centralization of governance, which is what the globalists want, this idea of global governance, which is what they've been doing, which is what our federal government has committed to over and over again, to ceding our sovereignty to an unelected, unaccountable foreign entity, creating cookie-cutter policy for nation states like Canada. An entity that doesn't have the best interest of Canadians any remotely at heart. So the antidote to global governance, to globalism, is local, is hyper radical decentralization. That's the answer. That's the answer. That's the solution to all of this insanity. Local, community, autonomy, sovereignty. That's the answer. And we can do that provincially. We can exercise, even within the existing Constitution, we can exercise our authority. We can exercise our autonomy and our sovereignty as a province. And that doesn't mean necessarily separation. However, that's also an important discussion we need to have. I'm not a separatist, so I want to make that very clear. The Buffalo Party is not a separatist party. However, we do recognize that the best way for us to get the best deal from Ottawa within Confederation, if we're going to stay in Confederation, the best way to get the most fair deal for everyone is to have leverage. Quebec has had leverage over the rest of Canada for decades. They've exercised that leverage, and Ottawa has been beholden to that province. We need to be able to go to Ottawa with 60% in favor of separation in our back pocket. That's not to suggest we're going to pull the trigger on separation. I've talked about this before. I'll mention it again now. I'm not a fan of separation. I think in the event, let's say Saskatchewan and Alberta separate, there comes a day. I think that makes us a very small country, very vulnerable to foreign influence, as we're seeing in the Ukraine. Ukraine in 2013, 2014 had the Maidan protests, mostly nationalists. However, that movement was hijacked by globalists, by the World Economic Forum, by Zelensky. Zelensky was a puppet to the World Economic Forum, and that country was taken over by globalists. It's very interesting to watch those protests, and throughout the whole crowd, they're waving EU flags, which completely goes against any sort of nationalist ideation. So it makes me very nervous for what full-on separation would do and the position it would put us in. Now, there's been some discussion, for example, if that was to happen, we still have the problem of getting our resources to Tidewater. Well, there's an opinion out there, and I don't agree with it. There's an opinion coming out of the Alberta Prosperity Project that suggests that they'll rely on the UN to get their resources to Tidewater. Not going to happen. That law, international law that you're referencing, is for third world countries. Like Afghanistan, for example, they'll help. The UN will step in to ensure that Afghanistan can get whatever they need from a port to their landlocked country. And that they'll get whatever resources they have, let's say it's heroin, to Tidewater, right? Poppies. So they'll work with nation states of that description. They will not work with a country made up of Saskatchewan and Alberta that's chock full of resources, that's first world. They're not going to do anything. They're going to help get our resources to Tidewater. Are you kidding? It's not going to happen. The last thing in the world we want to have to do is rely on the UN. That's it. You do that, you're finished. So it's a terrible idea. And I'm not sure how they arrived at that. I like a lot of things that the APP has been doing, but I'm very critical of that position, let me tell you. The last thing anyone wants to do is have to rely on the UN. So in the big picture, I'm not a big fan of that. Now, at the end of the day, if we go to Ottawa with leverage and Ottawa still resists or rejects a fair deal for provinces like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC, then a serious conversation needs to be had with those provinces and the people within those provinces as to what we're going to do and how we're going to survive. Because ultimately, it would come to a point of survival. And in that case, that would be the only instance where I would be in favor of separation. But we have to negotiate from a position of power. We have to have leverage. And the people have to give us that leverage if we're going to be effective in negotiating a better deal with Ottawa. So, and we have to take a stronger stand. I mean, we just ultimately have to start saying no to Ottawa. If it's not fair, if it's detrimental to the people of Saskatchewan, then we have to say no. We just have to say no. and let the chips fall where they may. So, anyways, a couple of things I wanted to mention. within this run that I'm going to take for Saskatoon, Meewasin. It's an interesting riding. From what we can tell, it's got three different demographics. There's some poor, there's some middle class, and there's some upper middle class. And of course, it's not rural by any stretch, so the issues are a little different, but still relative. And we have to ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to get opposition into the legislature. We have to have an opposing view to what's happening, and we have to have somebody telling the truth. We have to have somebody reporting on what's going on in there, honestly. So essentially, that's my platform. That's what I'm running on under the Buffalo Party, and I look forward to it. I'm excited. So let the games begin, and I'm going to need your support. Interesting thing about provincial politics is anybody outside the province can also support my campaign. So if there's people that understand that Saskatchewan can lead our country out of this globalist hell they've put us in, and you want to see some of that change, there's nothing stopping or preventing you from supporting my campaign financially. And so that's huge. And you know, what happens in Saskatchewan could very well happen across the board. So any and all support is greatly appreciated. And that's that. I'm on my way to Nadine Ness's event here down in Rotary Park. If you're in Saskatoon and you're looking for something to do this afternoon, head down there. They're going to be premiering the release of a documentary about the convoy. So looking forward to seeing that. And we'll see you down there if you're going to be down there. Anyways, other than that, I'm just about at the end of my road here, coming into Saskatoon, so I better get off this thing. And that's a wrap. So I'm now very much provincially focused. And my message last night at the event of almost 1,000 people was very well received. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to this campaign. I look forward to taking our province back and being the tip of the spear in that operation. So that's that. Remember, globalism bad, nationalism good. All right, ciao for now. Sorry, I can't read any comments or answer any because I'm not reading them. All right, ciao.